Okay, just starting off again. So welcome to day 3 of Qdabra Forms training. I hope you all are having a good day. So let me just start off by doing a review of what we did yesterday in our day 2. So we were supposed to do a question and answer yesterday, but we weren't able to. So I hope you don't mind doing some question and answer for today before we start day 3. So I only have a few questions here, so let me just uh, pick one from the participants list. Okay, so the first question is, how can you validate your forms data in Forms Viewer? Nicole, would you like to answer that?
I would select B. Although you could do any of them.
Yeah, that's correct. B or C. So we normally would use the get errors command together with the validation rules. That's the lab that Yesha demoed yesterday. And then there's an option also for showing prompts, adding conditions to your rules to trigger the prompt. But the best that we recommend is using get errors command. Yeah, sure. Would you like to add some more to that?
Yes, so
Yeah.
that is correct. You can use the get errors and the get error count commands to validate your form fields, and depending on the conditions that you applied, and if those conditions were satisfied, it will then show both. It can show both the error count and the error message to the user. So it is very important to validate your data, because cleaning up user mistakes are not fun, especially if you have hundreds to thousands of data.
Thank you. Wonderful. Okay, so next, after you have configured the save file attachments XTP, what else you can do to enhance this feature? Right. Catherine, would you like to go answer that? Sorry for putting you on this spot.
I think you can do any of them. I mean, I wouldn't normally choose to do A because I would normally take my attachments out of the form, but you can choose. And all the others, I think, are possible.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, A, B, and C is possible with the Save to SharePoint. We showed you yesterday how you can enhance the XTP more by playing around with the clear parameter. When you set it to true or false, it's either gonna clear the attachment or stay in the form, right? Just retain the attachment in the form. And we can also display the link by dragging the QRules link in the form. And also, I've shown you how to enable the multi-drop command for you to drop multiple files at once. So I think that's one of the favorite techniques from yesterday. But the last option here is not possible with the save to SharePoint, because you can't submit other metadata along with the file. But if you need to submit other metadata along with the attachment, we recommend for you to use the submit to SharePoint list command for that. All right. So next is, how can you get the control ID of a section in the form without opening the form source files? Yesha showed a technique of getting the control ID yesterday. In the previous training, or maybe you've gone over our old documentation before we usually instruct user to export the info platform to source files, and that's really difficult because you need to look into the XSL style sheet, and users who's not familiar with dealing with XML and HTML might get confused on the contents and that. So does anyone remember this?
Yeah, it's B, isn't it? I saw you check the elements in Chrome for that yesterday, right?
Right. Yeah, that's correct, Alex. Thank you. Yeah, so that's correct. Yasha did that trick where she opened the Chrome's DevTools and just pointed the arrowhead of the Chrome DevTool to the section that she wants to get the section ID. So that's what she did for the lab, the glass signature lab. So yeah, thanks, Alex, for remembering that. Okay, so number 4 is, what is the benefit of using template parts XTP in your forms? So it's day 3 and almost all of our labs are using XTPs. So maybe by now you've already thinking about the benefits of using template parts in your forms. Let's see. Misty, would you like to answer that?
Sure. For us, it is the continuity of the layout from form to form, and also not having to recreate the wheel every time we want to do a form. So we really like it.
Right. Maybe you had a lot of experience adding XTPs to your form. So yeah, we did a lot of XTP starting from day 1. We used get user XTP, the save files attachments XTP, the Dbxl XTP, of course, from yesterday. So we did a lot of XTPs, and we hope to develop a few more. Oh, and I remember we did the dynamic data connections XTP, and we showed you how to configure that in forms data. All right, so last is, what is the benefit of submitting your forms data to Dbxl? All right, Emma, would you like to go and answer that?
Well, I'm such a huge Dbxl super fan. I can see why you called on me.
Yeah.
So obviously, from what we saw in the last course, Dbxl is a really fantastic tool for storing data that's associated with your forms. And there's a huge number of benefits to that, but I think that some of the standout ones are version history and backups that you can access through Dbxl. You have the ability to access data that might not have been properly sent completely to your data storage solution. So for instance, if you had somebody complete a form and they submitted it and it was interrupted when the data was being updated to your SQL server, you have a way of going in and recovering that and re-shredding the information so that it's in your data storage solution. You're more easily able to run reports against a data storage solution like a SQL database than you are against XML documents. It's a lot easier to get people information and spin it up to dashboards. At least I find it is. And I just find it to be a really, really convenient way to look through all of the data that people are inserting into forms, see who's inserting that data when you say get user profiles or you have that information associated in Active Directory. And I just vastly prefer working with data that's been stored in that way.
Wow. You summarized it. That's excellent. Okay. So yeah, that's excellent, Emma. Thank you.
Thank you. I love Dbxl.
All right. And the father of Dbxl was here yesterday, so he explained all about the Dbxl stuff, and we learned so much about that. All right. So thank you for participating in our review questions. So let's go ahead and move on to day 3. So I hope you're all excited because I'm guessing every one of you are interested in how to modernize your forms. So this is part 1 of modernizing your forms. So today for lab 1, we're going to discuss how to make your forms responsive. And this style and technique is very, very important today because people are now on their mobiles, and CSS helps a lot in making your forms responsive and reactive to different mobile devices. So Yesha is going to discuss lab 1 and show a demo on that. And lab 2, I'm going to show you the flexible task panes. We actually discovered this technique last year, and we also demoed this in our October training. We showed you how to add the flexible task pane. But this time we're going to add more a little bit to it, like make it more fun and interesting for you. And then lab 3, we're going to show you how to add hoverable dropdowns. Mel and Karu did a webinar on this last February, and Mel discovered this technique about adding this hoverable filter dropdowns in dashboards, and Kauru helped in enhancing that feature. So we're gonna discuss and show that technique to you today. And for lab 4, we're showing how to beautify your forms with overlays. And guessing almost all of you are able to access the course directory form, and you notice that when you open the day button, it shows an overlay in the view, and it's really highlighting that section and getting the user attention. So it's really a part of another way of modernizing your forms. And lastly, is lab 5, we're going to show you how to add the debug slider. We've been using this a lot in our demos, showing you the curls history that we just slide in the footer. So we're going to show you how you can easily add that debug slider to your forms. So without further ado, let's start with lab 1. And Yasha will talk about this part.
Yes. Okay. All right. Thanks, Joanne, for that wonderful intro. So, for our first lab, we are going to show you how to implement CSS file to design your forms using our Kuros command called load resource. And implementing CSS helps you design your forms based on any specific theme that you want, be it your organization, color, and styling, or even your own design style. And also, the benefit of implementing CSS to your forms is not just the styling, but also making it mobile responsive, which means the layout or the content responds or adapts based on the size of the screen that they are presented on. So, I want to quickly show you. Let me go ahead and just share my screen first. Hmm. I think I cannot share my screen. All right. Try once more. Okay, let me know if you can see my screen.
See it.
Yes.
All right, great. Thank you. So let me open this form. So this is actually a form that has no CSS style on it. Just a form made from info path. And um, if we actually right click on the uh, display here and select inspect, as you can see, it won't be responsive the way we want it to be. So let me go ahead and open this our end form here, which has a CSS style on it. which actually you've been seeing for the past couple of days. So this is our patient consent form with CSS styles on it. And let me go ahead and click inspect. As you can see, oops, here we go. There. As you can see, it's being responsive as compared to the form that has no CSS style on it. So it's adapting to the screen that it is presented on. So let's go ahead and try to achieve this, implementing CSS style to your form. So let me open our starter form, which is again included in your downloadable package. So I actually want to first show you and tell you about the feature that we are using called screen tip. So if we actually right click a field here and go to the text box properties and go to the advanced, you will actually see here a screen tip field. So let me go ahead and just type here first name field, and let me just show you what its purpose is in InfoPath. So let me go ahead and click apply and click OK, and let's preview that. So if we actually hover our cursor to that field, it will show me a small window with a descriptive text, which is actually what I input to our screen tip. So that is uh, the function of the screen tip in InfoPath. But thanks to Karu, she actually created us a JavaScript wherein we can use this screen tip to provide a unique identification, which is called class, for our specific sections or fields. So this way, the class can be used to apply CSS formatting on that specific control. So for example, if I want this section to have a different color with a different section, then I can do that and I can specify that um, based on the screen tip that I've added here in the advanced tab. So that's the power of screen tip, and we'll be using that and applying it also for us to uh, be able to load properly our CSS styles. So let's go to our data tab and add those resource files that we need. So I've clicked here the resource files, and let's add here, and I'm just going to locate the package, and under that package you will see a resource files folder, and in that folder we are going to use the screen tip swap. Again, this is the JavaScript that we'll be using to specify the class names, and click OK, and then we'll go ahead and add the styles that we've already created, the CSS styles. Okay, click OK. And once we've added those, the last thing that we are going to do is go to our Qdabra rules, go to finish loading, and create a new action. So I want this to be um, executed first. So I moved it at the top, and I'll go ahead and rename this load resources for form. And then I will add and set a fields value, and I will go ahead and call our Qdabra rules command, which will execute then our load resource command. And then we will go ahead and add a name parameter here, and you will input here the name of the file that we just added in our resource file. So we have the screen tip swap.javascript. Let me go ahead and copy that, and
Yeah, Chef, the resource, the command
oh,
is
sorry,
spelled.
yeah. All right, thank you. Click OK, and then let's add another one for the style CSS. So let's go ahead and call our command from Qdabra rules, and I just pasted that, and I'll just change this to our CSS styles and click OK. And once you've done that, that is you can actually upload this to the forms viewer and see that the CSS styles have been applied to your forms. And I've already actually added um, the class names in the advanced tab. As you can see, I already have here my main. So let's go ahead and save this, and I'll just say demo. See if our command works. And let me just update this. Go to our demo, update, and hopefully shows us. There we go. It is currently showing us the form that has CSS styles on it. One thing that I do when I actually try to apply a CSS to my forms is I actually do it here in the browser, which is easier because it actually shows me already the result. So to do that, I just right click to this browser and click inspect. And I try to point to any control that already has a design on it that I've already included in my CSS. And let me go ahead and scroll this up. And I actually look for this name here called template files and click that. And here you will actually see the CSS styles file that we added in our resource files. So you can actually edit it through here. So for example, let's try to change the background image. I have here a sample background image. I actually have two. So let's just select this. This is actually a free image that I've already saved. And I just want to see what this image looks like in my form. So let me go ahead and change this background image URL. Let me expand this and try to just change this and see how it looks like. Well, all right. So as you can see, it instantly showed me what it looks like to my form. And I can also change the color instantly and choose a color for my buttons, for my sections. If you recall, I showed you a section that has a screen tip called my main. So this is actually me calling that section, and I want it to be designed this way. I want the width to only be 40%, so we can change that if you want it to have a larger width. I can also change the background color here. As you can see, it automatically shows me the changes that I made. And let's just make it a wash gray. You can also change the button names, the button colors. So I have here my button design, and I actually can see the orange color here, so it's very easy for me to change it to whatever color I want. And I actually can use this color picker and click it and select a color that can match my background. So what I can do is select this, and it will instantly show me um it will actually instantly change that color. And let me go ahead and just change my submit button color here and select the toggle picker, color picker, and just change that. So this won't actually be saved. This is just you editing it in your browser, so you can actually copy paste this to your stash resource files and just save it and re-upload it once more to your form so that you can edit your styles to your form. So just save this to um just save this sheet and then again upload it to your resource files, and um it will instantly show this design to you. So one other thing that I forgot to mention when you're trying to add a class name for any section or control is go to section properties advanced. If you notice, I always start with a my underscore. So that is very important when you're adding a screen tip, because the JavaScript is actually uh, looking um, for that specific prefix for it to work. So you need to start it with a my and then an underscore, and then you can rename this to whatever you prefer it with. All right, I think that's it for the load resource files. Do you have any questions? Have to be. We have one question from Suzanne. Does the CSS have to be uploaded to the form? We input a class name that is in the SharePoint main CSS file. Will it pick that up? Um, yes, I think you need to add the CSS file to your form, so because it will actually run our if you recall, we tried to run it through our resource command here, and it will be looking through the resource file. So you will be needing to upload the CSS style to that form, or even your JavaScript file. I hope that answered your question.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, all right. Does anyone have any more questions for me? All right, I think that's it for the load resource file. And feel free to try and look at the styles CSS and just play around with it, and you'll actually learn. You can, and if you want to achieve something and you can't achieve it, you can email us and we'll try to help you out with it. All right, thank you.
That was fast. You did a very good job. All right. Thanks, Yesha. So let me share out the slides again. All right, I hope everyone is able to get to the package. I wasn't able to ask this earlier, but I hope everyone is able to download. So now we're discussing lab 2, which is adding flexible task panes to your forms. And the task pane is it's a rectangular window that it appears docked on the right. It can either be right or left side depending on how you set it in your CSS styling. And it's really useful because with task panes, you can display information like menus, especially when you're designing dashboards, and you can add quick links to the task panes and help text. So it helps your users complete their task quickly and efficiently without closing the current page of the form. So that's one benefit of adding task pane. So for this lab, we're gonna learn how to add the task pane from scratch. So for those of you who haven't tried the flexible task panes yet, so this is a good place to learn how to add that. And also, like what Yesha used for responsive forms, I'm also going to show you how to use the screen tips to leverage that function in info path, which Kaoru Okamura, by the way, discovered. Yeah, so we'll do that as well in this lab, and we'll use CSS and JavaScript to design the task pane. Also, I'm going to show you at the end how to add the menus and when you click on the menu, it will hide or show some sections inside the content of the form. All right. So let me just proceed with my lab 2 demo here. So before anything else, let's get to the package. All right, so in the package, you will see the PDF file. So let's open that. All right, so this is making use of the original styling that we did from last October. And then this is the original version. And in this template, you're going to see that original color in the document, exactly what's shown here in the document. But I've also provided a different form with a different color and styling. So it depends on your form's theme and branding, right? So you can play around a bit on the CSS styling like what Yesha showed you. So I also have the resource files here, the fbflex.css, the screen tip swap, and toggle class. So we're going to be needing that. And I've noted that here in the document as well. So other stuff are some resources that maybe are also helpful in building this form. But if you are if you can think more of how to design your form, or maybe you know more about CSS, of course you can enhance this a little bit more, perhaps. All right, so let's show you the original task pane that we did last October. So I'm opening the form with the flexible task pane. So as you can see, this is the header. It's fixed on top, and you can add the form name here in your logo, and it's showing us the content. And when I click on this toggle, the hamburger menu here, it will show the task pane in a sliding transition. And it's doing this sliding transition because it's making use of flex, the CSS flex box technique. If you're not familiar with that, you can search about Flexbox and just Google it, and it will direct you to some CSS resources. So it's doing CSS Flexbox. That's why the content here is being flexible. And also when I click on the menu buttons here, it's going to show us different sections in the content. And also it's doing that nice highlight here for the buttons. And if I add a really long help text, it's gonna scroll for us. So the content here on the middle is not scrolling away when I scroll on the task pane. So that's because this is one area, and our CSS is playing in the background here, and it's adding a scroll that's dedicated to this task pane. And when you have longer tables here in the content itself, then of course we're going to have another scroll here. But right now I don't have any content yet. So that's the original design from the October class, and that's what you're going to see in the document. But today I was able to play around with it and just added some colors and added some queries to display data. So I'm showing a supermarket example, like an online grocery shopping. But it's just very simple for the purpose of this demo. Is just showing a static repeating table. So when I click on the menu, it's gonna display different categories of our supermarket items here. And yeah, so I'm going to show you how you can work on beautifying your form with this Flex task pane. All right. So For this lab, there is no starter form because we're going to start from scratch. All right. I'm scared because I'm going to start from scratch. I might make a mistake, so forgive me. I don't memorize it all, even though I wrote the document. So yeah, please let me know if you see any mistakes. Okay, so let's start off by following the document. So if you have it open, you can follow along. All right. So first, we need to inject Q rules, and I've already done that. I have Q rules here in my blank form. And then we need to add a section. So I'm going to place my cursor here and add a section. Okay. And usually when you add a section in InfoPath, it's going to create group 1 as default. And I don't want to clutter my main data source because I don't need it. I just need to bind it to some group so it can be binded to that group node. So I deleted the extra group there. All right, so okay, so I just added a section here, okay? So you see the document is very detailed. All right, so right now I'm gonna add a screen tip. So right click on the section and add a screen tip. And I'm using the prefix my because as Yesha explained, the CSS is going to look for this prefix in the class and then this text header. So my underscore header. So for those of you who are still confused why we're using the screen tip, maybe I'll explain this a little bit more because I started off by studying it myself and how it works in HTML and all. So, all right. So let me show you how the function of screen tips. I'm not sure if you're familiar with, or if you have used screen tips at all in InfoPath. All right. So I just previewed, right? In filler, I can't see the section because it's all white there. So let's add some shading. So because I've added a screen tip, when I hover on my section here, it's gonna display the screen tip, which is typically would be used for guidance text to guide users, right? So that's the purpose of adding screen tips in InfoPath. But Haru discovered that we can use this function to convert it to classes and then refer to those classes when they are already converted to classes in CSS. So, okay, first of all, let's upload this. And I'm going to show you how it looks. All right, maybe I made a mistake there. Lord, you have my resources there. Okay, let's stop now. I'm doing trial and error today on this, so bear with me. Okay, so that's without CSS. And let's hover in this section. Let's find it here in the elements and let's look where it's adding that screen tip. All right, so you see this title attribute here that's added in that div style. It's taking that screen tip, so it's called my header. So we need this value, the title value, to be added here in the class attribute. So this is the class, and this is what the CSS is using, not the title. So we need to convert the title to class. And that is what this screen tip JavaScript is doing. Oh, sorry. Just double click on it. Let me open it in Notepad. Yeah, so if you open the screen tip swap.js, you're going to see this JavaScript and Karu developed it to swap the screen tip to classes so CSS can read them. All right, I'm going to pause for a bit. Let me know if you have questions about that. All right, got some questions. And we use this in conjunction with our XTP. Screen tips. I think so, because with XTPs, you can add resources. So when you add the XTP in your form, the resources automatically goes along with the XTP. So yeah, I think you can add the screen tip swap when you develop your XTP. So depending on the purpose of your XTP. Right. All right. Thanks, Misty. Okay, so let's go back. Let's just remove the shading here. And I'm just gonna continue with the steps in the document. Again, we're starting from scratch here. So over here. Let me know if I'm going too fast or too slow. All right. So I just added a 2-column table, and you can add your logo here. So let's add a logo. Okay. Do the grocery logo. I don't know how to call my store, so. All right, and add a picture button, and let's add an image for our picture button. So select an image, right click on the picture button and select apply. All right, so you just made your header there. So, okay. And then after making your fixed header, let's do the body of our form. So let's add a container. Okay, so I just added a section again and bind it to the my fields. Delete the extra group there. And this is going to be the container of both the content and the task pane. All right, so what I do is I normally just copy the section, the same section, and paste it as an inner section there. And okay, so let's not forget to add a screen tip first here in the main section. So it's called my main. And this one is, we're calling my content. And then I'm going to copy that, paste another section at the bottom. And this can be resized because it's the task pane. And we'll call it my underscore task pane. Okay. All right, so let's just save that. Go back to my document here. So we just did that. All right. So of course you'd want to have some data here in your content section, right? So let's just put some padding to make it look better, okay? Then we're gonna add another section here inside it, and let's just then we'll call it my content section. And so let's just go back to it later. So let's do our task pane. Let's add a table here. Okay. Save menu. And let's add buttons. So just regular buttons will do. And it's so important to make them 100% and not pixels. So it's taking up the width of our task pane. And let's rename it to, so we're doing supermarket, right? So let's do fruits and vegetables. And for the ID, you would want to name it like this. So it's very important because the CSS will look for that. And we're gonna, of course, we're gonna use unique IDs for each buttons. Okay, someone's just chatted me. Sorry. All right, so what I do is I just copy paste. And let's do another category here. And paste that. And let's do beverages. Oops, or okay. All right, so for the sake of adding content, let's just add something inside this. Oh, sorry. Forgot. Okay. No spaces. And why are we doing first name anyway? Okay, maybe let's not do that. Let's just query directly from the SharePoint list. Okay, let's do that. So this is my store list, which stores all of my items with categories. So let's query that. And okay, select some of these columns. And let's not query it alone. So we don't recommend checking this. And so what we do is query that data connection here on finish loading. Okay, but it's still not the best practice because we want to filter our queries anyway. We don't have that many data here, but we can filter them later. Okay, so let's name this fresh. Oh, yep, whoops. Okay. Right, so let's just note down the columns. Let's call the form and form. All right, and before anything else, we need to add some rules here in the hamburger button. So let's load some scripts. Let's set the command field to use the custom toggle class. Okay. So what it's doing is it's finding all of the elements that's containing this text class. And then in our CSS file, it's going to run this class for that selector. Okay. And this is what's responsible for the sliding transition effect. Oops, sorry. That's why the class is named open, and the active class is doing the highlight for the buttons when we click on them. The content ship is doing the sliding transition and also the open class. And okay. Just checking the document here. Yeah, forgetting something. So let me double check my resource files here. So I've got the fbflex.css, right? Okay, so let me just open the latest design and grab the CSS from here. Let's use that. So let's export that. Okay, so I've got fbflex.css, primitive swap, and toggle class, and it's running here on load using load resource command. Okay. You just review this again. And so now here at this point, test our form. Okay, so just saving this. Demo folder and drag this end form here. Let's update. And I hope it works. Okay. So yeah, so there's our table in the content, and there we go. So the toggle is sliding our task pane there. And so our list is displaying all of the contents in our first section here. So what we're going to do next is we're going to filter them when we click on the menus here. So it's not displaying all at once. Okay, so let's copy the first section and let's make a duplicate of that. And actually, I want to make some changes here because it doesn't look good to me. Okay. And let's make this calculated values because we're just displaying data. We don't want users to enter anything on them. Okay. And all right, so let's do good work here. Let's do a different color. And here we're doing beverages. And, all right. Can you still hear me? Are you following here? Oh, okay. Yasha, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Oops. Okay, thank you. So I just added a group called Form Logic, and I'm going to add a section here. And we're going to use that simply to hide and show the sections. So let's do a rule here and set default section. And let's default it to 1. Okay, set section 1, and this would be section 1. This would be 2 and 3. Okay, and we're gonna hide and show them depending on the buttons clicked here. So let's add a formatting rule, hide it if section is not equal to 1. So this is a good way to hide different parts of your forms and not do the view like some users or some InfoPad designer would just create multiple views for just displaying simple section or very small details. So we do recommend just using one view and hide using the hide show technique to display the sections you want the users to see. Okay, so section, okay. Under here. It's not default. Let's just copy that. It's here. Okay, and then let's run a rule here to set the section. So when this is clicked, I want this section 1 to show. And for this one, I want the second section to show. This one. All right. Okay, just completed it. Okay. Okay, let's drag this over. And of course, we didn't add a filter. Right. So it's still showing everything for us. Yeah. So we've got fruits and vegetables here, but it's showing health and personal care. So, all right, let's go back to. So does anyone know how we can filter that?
Use show hide on the repeating table. Filter by a product category.
Yeah, that's correct. But we're doing that here on the button. So here in the end form, you just, by the way, who answered that question? Sorry, I didn't.
Nicole,
Oh, thank you, Nicole.
you're welcome.
All right, so I'm adding filters here. So let's filter product category, right? And let's stop. Let's add the query. Okay, so it's going to filter that table first before it's going to show the section. Okay. So probably all of you know this already, how to filter your SharePoint list, right? But yeah, well, I just wanted to show you how to enhance the flexible task pane sample here. Right, so it's still not querying because I'm querying everything alone, right? So let's do, oh, it's not doing anything for us now. Why? This is where the troubleshooting part comes. So I'm setting that to, oh, see? Oh, why? So not, okay. All right. All right, so it's now filtering it for us. So that's one way you can make use of the task pane, is to use the menus for displaying different sections that you want the user to see, or you can either use that or do some filterings here. So that's what I'm doing. Some would also display some help text here if you want to. So that's also one way you can make use of the task pane. All right, so that's the end of lab 2. Does anyone have any question or comments for this lab? Okay, so no questions. Well, let me know if you have, just feel free to chat. Okay, so now we're gonna take a quick break and we'll be back after 10 minutes. Okay, we're back. Okay, before we move on to labs 3 and 4, I'd like to know what you think of the first 2 labs that we just showed you. Okay. Debbie, you're here. What do you think of the CSS styling in lab 1 and the task pane? Do you
I'm
think you
excited
can
about
use them?
I'm excited about the task pane piece because I actually think that could be really beneficial for our forms. I think you referenced it previously. We're probably one of the people who use pages rather than the task pane, and it's such a pain to maintain the forms because of all the pages and having to consider everything that's happening in them. You quite often forget. So I'm very excited about the task pane piece.
Wonderful, wonderful to hear that. Yeah, and you can, well, it's not instantly or automatically applied. You still need to configure it a bit, but you know, we have detailed steps that you can follow. And yeah, let us know if you run into any problems adding that to your form.
Yeah, we
And
definitely will.
also, thank you. Thanks, Debbie. And yeah, Misty says that she's already thinking of a few forms she wants to try it on. Glad to know that. Glad to know that, Misty. Okay, thanks for those comments. So let's move along. So lab 3 is about adding hoverable column filter in dashboards, and it will be like a continuation of lab 2 because we're making use of the same form with task pane here, and we're going to add a hover effect in the dashboard column. So it will let you filter your columns with a hoverable dropdown, and I'm going to show you that shortly. And this technique will make your forms, of course, more interactive, and it's actually like what SharePoint is displaying when you're in the form library. Yeah, I think when in classic mode, you can do that filters with columns in SharePoint. All right, so what you'll learn how to add the hoverable filters to column headers with styling. You'll learn also how to query SharePoint lists using filters and display only the data that you need. And actually, this is a technique that Mel discovered. She's our very senior form designer. She's really very good with adding the CSS styling and this technique that she's innovated in the past. It's really amazing. And I know that Emma and Nicole worked with Mel before. Do you know if she added this hoverable filter in one of your forms? I forgot which customer she's worked on with this technique.
We have hoverable tips, but not filters.
I see. Maybe it's for another customer, I forget. But yeah, so I'm going to show you the end form, how it looks like. Just close this. Okay, this is the same form that we used, right, with the task pane. And here I've added the hoverable technique in my branch column. So if I click on this, it's showing that hoverable drop down with my filters here. And if I select one filter, it's gonna filter that table for us. And yeah, so it's a very cool technique that she discovered. And so Actually, you can watch the webinar that she did last February with Kaoru, and it's more an advanced lesson for this technique. Right now, I'm just providing the very basic stuff like how this as the CSS styling is applied in this filter. Okay, so let's move to the lab package here. So when you open the lab, you're going to get these files. So let's start by opening the starter form. Okay, and just close this. Okay. And yeah, so this is like a continuation of the previous lab because normally you want to use the hoverable filters with dashboards. So I thought maybe we should just reuse the previous, the form from the previous lab. Right, so let's open the document. Okay, so here's the preview, right? And what you'll need is a SharePoint list to query. So for this example, I'm using the store list, which stores all my items with their categories. I've also provided the STP in the lab for those lists that I'm querying for this tab. So I have the store list and I also have the branches for my filters. So if you would like to try this out in your own SharePoint site, you can deploy this STP by adding this under your list templates. And then once they're added as a list template in your site, you can add that as an app to your site content. So you go to the site contents and add the STP as SharePoint lists. So you can either use the samples that we're providing, but of course, you can always customize it the way you want. Maybe you want to query your own SharePoint list, so you're free to do so. All right, so the first thing you want to do is add a query to your to the SharePoint list. And for the purpose of this demo, I'm calling my store list as my main list because I have another secondary list for my filters. And I've already added that here as my data connection. So it's what this repeating table is pointing to here. Yeah, next, just prepare another list for your filters. Like if you have specific filters that you want to use for your dashboard. So I've already prepared that here, and so I'm going to add that. All right, so let's add the query. Okay, and I only have one column to query there, and I don't want to query it on load. Okay, let's go back here. And then let's put our cursor in the column that we want to add the hoverable dropdown. So in this case, it's the branch column that we want to filter. So let me just adjust the other columns a little bit to make room for the sections. So I just removed the label of the column and we're going to add a section here. And we're going to bind this to the root node of our the filter, the list that we're using for the filter. So let's just bind that to the my fields. And okay, so we just added a section and binded that. Okay, so Again, we're using screen tips for this technique. So right click on the section properties, select advanced and add the screen tip there. Okay, and then add a button inside this. Should be 100% because we want the button to take the width of the column. And we want it to look like the rest of the column. So we don't want it to appear like a button. So let's remove the shading and I just remove the borders. Okay. And yeah, so we're naming this branch. And let's just make it look a little bit more like the other ones. And then we're going to add another section right below this button. So let's add another section. And let's again bind that to the root node of our store filters query. Okay. And let's add a screen tip for that inner section. I'm going to right click again and add my screen tip here. And we're going to drag and drop the repeating node of our store filters to the inside of this table. So select the repeating node and drag that as a repeating section. Okay. And inside this repeating section, we're going to add another button. So and let's again remove the shading, remove the borders. And for this one, we'd like the button to take the name of the branches. So we're going to select it here. So this title column here is the name of our branch. Okay. 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 So in the first button that we added for the column name, let's add a rule here to query the list that holds the filters. Okay. Query list. Let's query that. Okay. So this, we just did that. And then we're going to add a rule here to filter. Yeah, to set the filter. So if the user selects any item from our filter here, because it's a repeating section, right? It's going to show all of our filters. It's just not showing right now because it's dynamically getting that title. So let's set the filter. So let's set the filter for the My Store, our main list. So we're filtering the branch to be equal to whichever is selected in our dropdown, in our hoverable dropdown. And then we're going to query our main list. So it's going to change data when we select from the hoverable dropdown. Okay. And I'm going to save this as my end form. Okay. And then before I forget, we need to add the resource file. the CSS that's doing that design for us. So we'll grab it here from the package, the Hoverable Dropdown CSS. And we need to add a rule in our Qdabra rules finish loading, and we need to add a load resource command here to load that file for us. Okay, and that's all you need. All right, so let's try this. Okay, opening my form and trying it out in the first section of our category here. So it's displaying all the branches for my fruits and vegetables. So if I click the branch, it's going to display the list of branches. So I'm only displaying a few rows here, but this example will really help if you have a really long list of data displaying in your table, right? So I don't have that many data to query, so this is just sample data. Yeah, so I have these branches, right? So let's try Seattle. So it's querying that for me. Right, so yeah, that's how you do the hoverable technique. And with this sample, I can just like copy that section over to the same column. That's in my different category here. And it's gonna do the same for us. I hope. Yeah. So I'm in the food cupboard now, and if I want to select the branch where that item is available, I can select it here. Yeah. So yeah, that's it for my demo. Does anyone have any comments on this? Do you think this would be helpful in making your forms more efficient for your users? Let's ask Suzanne, would you like to share some comments?
Sure, yeah, I think that would be helpful. The only thing I have a question is if I guess you could just do it in the CSS or whatever, but to add some kind of indication that there is a drop down there.
Oh yeah, so thanks for pointing that out. Yeah, so that's that part I also need to show you. So if you inspect this, let's see if we can do that. Inspection. Actually, Chrome would not let us inspect that because the hover is happening when you click it, and it's not allowing me to click. Anyway, I will open the CSS and show you the contents. With that in Notepad++. And what's happening there is, as you can see, maybe we can turn it off for you to see without the CSS. Okay. Okay, Catherine has a question. I will get to that question in a minute here. Okay, so let's see how it looks without the hoverable CSS. So as you can see, it's just plainly displaying the repeating table for us. So if you remember, we just dragged the repeating node from our SharePoint list query. So that's how that's why it's just showing plainly like this. But if we add the CSS, just gonna add it back here. Oh, okay. Just gonna refresh there. Yeah. So, well, if I inspect it, it's not showing me because it's happening on Hover. But this is the part that's doing the display of the drop-down content. So it's making use of display block. So that means that when it detected that the button or the user is hovering on the button, it's this class here, it will display the drop-down content. So this part here, the display block, is responsible for displaying the drop-down filter drop-down content class that we added in the section screen tip here, this part. So that's the content that we want to display. And for the design, it's this one. So it's just very short. So this is the design of the drop-down content. So it's the position of the drop-down is absolute, and the scroll is automatic, like thing. Well, it's not auto, it's just scroll. You can do auto here. If it's really long, it's automatically, it will automatically display the scroll. So I have some questions here in chat. So first, Catherine, I have a question. Can you have a filter on multiple columns at the same time? And is there a version of this that could enable multiple selections on one column? So for this question, I would recommend watching the webinar from Mel, because for that webinar, she applied the hoverable drop-down technique for multiple columns. And we can also do that in this lab, but it's going to be longer. Yeah, of course, you can add that. You can add a different list to query the filtering or the specific filter that you want. So for example, in this sample form, the item is displaying this product category. You can also do that. Have a separate list for product categories where you can filter your products based on their categories, but we're already doing that here, right? So yeah, hope I answered your question. And you also ask if there's a version of this that could enable multiple selections on one column. I'm not sure if I'm understanding that correctly.
So it's just if you could select 2 branches at the same time, for example.
Oh, well, for this sample, you can only select one. But I believe you can also add some other stuff in this, like option for ascending or descending, something like that. Maybe we can add that to or enhance this lab more next time, or send this over to you if we made those improvements in the lab. Yeah, so you can definitely add some other stuff here to select, like what SharePoint does. Okay. In their SharePoint columns. I have one more question here. Oh, sorry. Okay, Misty is asking, could you add a down image in this section? Down image in the section next to the button. Yeah, I think that she was asking if you can add a function for, yeah, for ascending or descending, like if it's a down image. Okay. Oh, to indicate that there is a drop-down option. Yeah, of course you can do that. Actually, you can go here in the branch button here and add the down arrow next to the label. But maybe you need to copy that down arrow somewhere from Google. Yeah. Okay. So, does anyone else have any question? Alex, do you have any comments?
Excuse me, sorry, I was muted. No, it's good to see this in a practical way, I guess. And that task pane definitely is interesting to me. So,
Thank you. Wonderful. Okay, so let's move on to the next lab, which is lab 4, beautifying your forms using overlays. So, Yasha, are you ready to show this?
Yes.
Okay, I'll make you host.
All right. Okay. So
Right.
for lab
Oh, well,
4, sorry.
okay, I'm gonna show the slide first.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, great. Thank you. So for lab 4, we are going to discuss the overlay feature that you can implement to your form. So it's basically a window that floats above the page. So this form technique requires users to just focus on one specific window without having the user close the form and load a different form view. So let me go ahead and show you that overlay feature.
Okay.
Um, and I'm currently sharing my screen. Let me know if you can see it.
Yep.
All right. So we are now currently opening our overlay end form. And if we actually, and again, I'm using our patient consent sample form. And if we try to click this heart icon, it's going to show me just a basic information on what is a patient consent form. So this is actually the overlay. Again, it's a window that floats above the page, and you can use this with whatever is necessary for your forms. It can be you can open up the current user's information. You can use the get user again and display it here in the overlay, or any type of innovation that you can use. And we will be showing you how to apply this overlay to a sample form. And let me go ahead and open our package here. In your package, you will see these files, and let's go ahead and open our starter form. So in our starter form, what we are going to do first is to add the resource file that we are going to need. And the only thing that you need for this overlay to work is, again, just a CSS file. So if you go to our lab package and you see the resource files folder, you will see there the overlay CSS style sheet, which you can add to your resource files. And again, once you've added that resource file, we would be needing to load it into our form. So let's go ahead and add a new action here and just state load resource for overlay. And in here, we are going to call our command from Qdabra rules. And of course, we want to load that overlay CSS. So let's use the command load resource. And for the name parameter, remember, if you recall, it's overlay.css. All right. So now that the CSS is actually going to load, but we haven't really added yet the overlay section here. So that's what we're going to do next, is the window that will pop up when you actually click that icon button. So let's go ahead and add a section for that. And to do that, I will point my cursor at the end of the form, or you can point it to anywhere in your form, and just add a new section there. And I'll just change the binding to the main group because I don't really need a new folder, and I'll just remove that group one folder there. Just adjust this. And for this, we are actually going to add a screen tip, and we are going to name this my overlay container. So why are we adding this screen tip? Because if we actually look into our CSS file, our overlay CSS file here, the name of our class is my overlay container. So for the CSS to work, we need to add a screen tip to our section called overlay container. So let's go back to our form. I also want to mention in our Qdabra rules, I already have the screen tip swap. So again, it will swap the title, swap it to as a class name for our CSS to work. All right. So since we've added that my overlay container, we're gonna add another section. And let me just remove those added spaces. And for this section, we are going to add a screen tip and name this my overlay. Remove this space. And if we go back to our CSS, again, the name of our second class is my overlay. That's why I added a screen tip, my overlay. And the next thing that we are going to do is add the content to this pop-up view. And the first thing that we will be adding is the exit button or the close button. So if I go back to our form, we have your close button so that we can go back to the patient consent form. So let's go ahead and do that. Let me just change the binding to this because I don't really need a new group, and delete the group too, so that it's much more organized. And then we're going to add our close button. To do that, we are going to select the picture button from our controls, and I want this to be placed at the right side. And then go to picture button properties. In there, you can actually change the picture for this button, and just I've actually added a sample icon that you can use, but you can look for any icon that you would prefer to be added to your overlay. And I'll just simply add here the text that I want to show to the users. So you can use this. You can add a button or anything that you need in that overlay. So right now I'm just adding a basic text regarding patient consent form. And now that we've added the contents to our overlay, let's go ahead and add the rules of showing and hiding that overlay. So to do that, I want it to be seen when I click this icon here. So this is actually a picture button. That's why I am able to add an action. And I have here in the header a field called show information. So we are actually going to use that field. So I'm going to name this show information rule, and add and I'm actually going to set that show information field to true. And then for our close button, I will add again an action, and I actually want to hide this information when it's clicked. So let's go ahead and set that same field, our show information, to false. And then the last thing that we are going to do is just add a formatting to this whole section. So click formatting, and I just want this to be hidden if that show information field is not equal to true. So, all right. So that's actually it. That's how easy it is for you to apply that overlay feature to your forms. And let's go ahead and try and save this. And hopefully we didn't miss any step. And I'm going to save this as a demo. And I'm going to re-upload it to Forms Viewer. Upload a new template. I'm just going to close this one. And that's not, here we go, the lab 4 demo, and upload. And then let's open this form. Hopefully, well, it showed me instantly, which is wrong. Oh, sorry, I forgot. You should check the hide this control button. One of the things that I always forget when I try to add a formatting to my section here. So,
That's good.
all right, so let me resave this form and re-upload it. And let's see. All right. Okay, so let's click this button, and there we go. So that's how that's the simple basic steps that you can do to add an overlay to your forms, and you can redesign this. So go ahead and try and redesign it with the overlay.css that we've given you. I usually, like what I did earlier, I usually, oops. Can you still share? Can you still see my screen?
No, I can't.
Okay. Let me go ahead and reshare.
Yep, I can see it
All right. Okay, great. So, oh,
now.
why it keeps on.
Should I make you? Okay.
There we go. Can you see it
Okay.
once more? All right.
Yep.
I think I keep on hitting the stop share button, so that's my fault. All right, so let me inspect this, and you can actually redesign this to go ahead and redesign this. You can change the background color. So the my overlay container is this full container that you can see here. It actually shows you a bit of a black background because we want the users to focus on that window, that little window at the middle. So I can actually show you if you change that, you want it to be a lighter background.
That's
You can edit
cool.
that. And then you can also edit the color of this container, and you can add buttons and add the CSS for that buttons if you wish, or pictures, or anything that you can think of for the users to be able to understand the form. So that's it for lab 4. Do you have any questions for me? I
Can
think,
you explain the index part, Yasha? What's the purpose of the index property?
sorry, which property?
The index.
Oh, here. Oh, okay.
Yep.
So the index just in the overlay container, this is just um it's saying that I want it to be uh the one that is visible in my form. So I want it in front of my patient consent form here, because this is a section. So the index is just me stating that I want it in front of our patient consent form if I want to show that overlay. So this whole container here is in front our patient consent form. That's why um, it changes uh, a bit of a black color to it. So that's the index.
So the
Um,
value is 2. That means that it's
yes,
in front.
that's
So when you
yeah, it's in front.
deduct, okay, the value it's okay. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
That
sent
is
like sent
correct.
to front and sent to back.
Yeah, that is yeah, that's much more easier to understand. It's sending it in front for the
Yeah.
Z index. Okay.
So like you're layering your
Mhm.
sections. Okay.
Yes, that is correct. So you can go ahead and check out the other things that are added here, the line height, just the height between those um texts, and overflow. Overflow just means that um if I actually let me go ahead and click that. That's actually the overflow that's showing. So it's um if the div is a bit smaller than what we need, it will still show the text because the overflow is auto. So it will then show us a automatically show us a scroll button there. So that's the overflow. And hopefully you check the CSS and then start playing around with it and even add more designs to the overlay containers. So yeah.
All right. All right. Does anyone have any questions about this lab, displaying overlays? So we are showing you tips on how to modernize your forms. And as you can see, if you just combine all of those techniques in your form, like make them responsive, do the flex task panes, add some overlays. I can actually think of many ways how to use this overlay. You can, maybe your pharmacist is using a help button. So maybe you can display an overlay for your help text, or something else, like if you're working on a dashboard, you have an edit button and you want a section to display. And yeah, maybe you can display that section in an overlay and help your users focus more on that section alone. So yeah, does anyone have any comment? Caroline, have you tried this overlay technique before?
I have tried it before, and the one thing that I've noticed is all the techniques you've shown today, like the responsive design, you've made it a lot easier than it was back when I was first introduced to it, where we had to export the source files and go in and modify those files.
Right, yeah.
So I
Right.
like that. Thank you.
Well, yeah, thanks for letting us know. Yeah, I remember back then we used to export the source files and add IDs to different divs in the XSL style sheet, and it's really difficult to look into that file because yeah, it's a lot, especially for someone who's new to XSL style sheet, HTML. So with this modern technique that we're using now, we're providing this very simple technique of leveraging the screen tips and sections and making use of the JavaScript that you simply add as a resource file in your info platforms, and use the load resource command to run that screen tip, and it will convert your classes. And yeah, it will convert those screen tips to classes, and the CSS file will be able to run in the background with that help. Okay, so let's move on to the last lab. Yesha, you still have one last thing to show, right? So I'm just gonna go back to my slide here. Okay, so the last lab is about adding a debug slider. All right, Yesha, you ready for this? Mm, maybe she lost audio. I'm just gonna check on her.
Oh,
really
sorry.
quick.
My mic was on mute. All right. Okay. Let me go ahead and repeat the introduction there.
I'm
All right.
nervous.
So
Okay.
sorry
Okay.
about that.
Yeah.
All right. So for Lab 5, we are going to discuss the bug slider. So you've actually seen this from our past demos, wherein we try to uh, you see the footer part of our forms, wherein you see the debug curos that we have executed. So this slider is not limited to only having the curos history tables. It can serve to other purposes. So you can use it to show approval history, like what Misty has for their forms, form logs, and many more. So let me go ahead and show that to you quickly. And I'm trying to share my screen, but I think I can't. Here we go. Let me go ahead and open our end form for the debug slider here. Okay, so if you look into the footer part of our form, you will see here a debug section. And again, this is not limited to you applying it for only seeing the debug history. It can be all sorts of things. And if you want this to be only shown for the admins and and not for the users, of course, you can add a hide formatting for this execution history. So let's go ahead and try to apply a debug slider to our starter form in our package here. Let me go ahead and go to our lab 5. So this is our package with the same format. Again, I added here a resource files folder wherein we have the CSS, JavaScript that we will need for the toggle to work, and then a PNG for the debug button. But you can actually change this to whatever icon you prefer to your form. So let me open our starter form and let me close this demo here. All right. So the first thing that we are going to do, the same format that we did earlier, is to add those resources. So let's go ahead and go to our data tab, resource files, and add that JavaScript. Oops, that's lab 4, lab 5. All right. Resource pass of our lab 5, and I will add here the toggle class JavaScript and also our debug slider CSS. Okay. And then we want that to be loaded in our finish loading. So let's go ahead and add an action here called load resources for debug. You can actually combine this to only one rule, but for demo purposes, I've divided them into separate rules so that you know what resource files are for each feature. So for the debug, we're going to and add a load resource command here for the toggle class. I forgot the name. Here we go. Let me just copy paste this toggle class .js, and then we're gonna add another command for the load resource of our CSS. Go to the debug slider CSS here. Don't forget the .css. All right. So now that that's gonna be executed, we will be needing a debug section. So let's go ahead and scroll down to the end of the form, and I will be needing a new section here. And so let's go ahead and add a section. And again, I'll be changing the binding to the main group and removing this group 1. And then for this section, we are gonna add a screen tip called my debug slider. Okay, so for this section, this is actually for this full div that you see here at the bottom. So that's what we are currently adding right now. And then at the middle part, we are going to add the debug button or the toggle button. So to do that, let's go ahead and add a picture button here and remove this space. In this picture button, like what I showed you in our resource files in our lab 5, I've provided you a sample debug icon button, toggle icon button there. And I'll just click apply and click OK. And in here, we are actually going to add an action. And let's just call this load slider. And in this slider, we are going to add a command. So we're going to call Qdabra rules command. And I actually don't memorize the command. So let's go ahead and open the instructions here I that is provided to you. So let's go here. I saw it. So this is the command that should be executed when the button is clicked. So this is actually a custom toggle class. So it's a custom command which is not actually included in our command rules. It's custom. That's why we actually have a JavaScript called toggle class. So that's the JavaScript is doing the action of sliding enabling the sliding of our debug slider. So just go ahead and add this rule here to that button and click OK. So now that we have added that section, we are going to add a new section for the content of our debug slider. So to do that, again, we're going to add a new section here and change the binding, and we're gonna delete this new section. And for this new section, we are going to add a screen tip called my debug. Click apply, and then add one more section. And for this, we are going to call it my debug content. So again, those screen tips are necessary because those are the class names that are already applied in our CSS style. So for this, content, we are just going to apply our Qdabra rules execution history. So we're going to drag and drop this. But first, let me just change the binding because, again, we don't need another group here. So let's go ahead and go to our execution history so that it will show us all of the commands that was executed. And there we go. Let's try and save this form and see if our debug slider works. And let's save this as demo. Click save. And then we upload this to an existing template here. Go to lab 5. I renamed it glass signature. Sorry. Well, I can't rename that because it's open. So let me just say lab 5 demo and click update. There, let's try and click this toggle button. As you can see, it is currently showing us our Q rules history. One thing to mention, if you are adding the execution history to our debug slider here, let's go ahead and open our demo again. Let's just add a space so that it will show us all of the rules that are executed because it's currently stuck here. So for us to see that, let's simply just add a line break there and resave it. And we're gonna overwrite that. And let's see if we can see the end part of our execution history there. Did I save it correctly? Let's go ahead and upload that one more. Demo. Saying it's the same version. It's currently stuck at the end.
Did you add more spaces? Can you add a few more spaces?
Oh, okay.
Like, that's there. Yeah.
Save that correctly there.
No.
It's currently
Oh, I know. Maybe you're doing it. You're adding the spaces inside the intersection. You need to add it
outside.
below that section, maybe.
Let's try that.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me try that one. And maybe I missed one step here that I forgot to add. Let me just quickly go through this. It's correct. My debug content. Did I add the correct?
All
I'm
right.
just
Yeah, you. Yeah, you were adding it correctly before. It's supposed to be in the intersection. I just checked my previous.
It should be in the
endpoint.
intersection.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and try that one more. It's currently not
Well,
scrolling.
I think
I think I missed one step or one simple step here, but if you go through the document one by one, this should work.
What if
But
you
yes.
inspect it?
Okay.
Yeah, and
Go
then
ahead and do that.
let's make it larger. No, I mean the size of the section. Yeah.
Here.
Yeah, just click on the top of the table.
There we go. And we are just going to look for that div. Let me go ahead and click. It's not that easy to. There we go.
I see it. Yeah.
This is the
That
debug content.
content.
And then
It
I
should show the
think
open class. Oh, scroll down a bit. Okay. Maybe it's the other one. Oh, that's the one for height and bottom. It's
I see the
like
problem. I think I know the problem. I think I added the wrong name for the section. So let me go ahead and double check our CSS here.
Yeah.
That's correct.
you kept no, that's correct.
It's a bit confusing there. Yeah. I think I added the correct section there. It says height auto.
Can you make the height like 500 instead of 350 pixels?
In here. Let's try 500 pixels there.
No, not there. The my debug section. Yeah, that's the one.
Oops. Oh, there we go.
Yeah,
I
right
think
there. Mhm.
yeah, that height was just too small for it to work.
Maybe.
So
Mhm.
thanks to CSS. But I think
Was it applied?
yeah, I think you need to add more height to it for it to work.
Yeah, it's good to know that we can adjust it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I wonder
Yeah,
though
so
in the yeah, go ahead.
yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was wondering in the original patient consent form that we were demoing from day one, was it like this or is it also lacking height?
I think it's not though. I really think I missed one step.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh, yeah, it's the
it
same.
is. So yeah, so one little thing is just to add another height to that debug slider for the execution history to show everything correctly. And yeah, hopefully you can use this debug slider to your forms and apply it to with different techniques and with different purpose. So yeah, that's it for the debug slider.
Wow, yeah, thank you, Risha. Well, just a little trivia. Do you know what's the inspiration for this technique?
That I don't know
Can you
of.
guess?
I'm not sure. What is the inspiration for this?
Maybe whoever designed this technique is inspired by the peekaboo game. I think
Yes. Yeah.
I'm gonna call this if I'm gonna make this an XTP, I'm gonna call it peekaboo XTP.
Yeah.
This is hiding and showing in the background,
Mhm.
right? Yeah. So yeah, that's it for the last lab. Does anyone have any comments? Do you think this can be useful in your forms? Maybe you've been used to showing or debugging the Kuros commands. Misty says great content, very useful. Thank you. All right. So if you don't have any questions, let's just proceed with the. Actually, I don't have any slides anymore. So maybe let's just proceed to to our takeaways for this day. Let me just share my screen. Okay. So before we end day 3, we'd like to get your feedback. And yeah, so just share us what you've learned. Do you think these techniques would help in modernizing your forms? Let's just go from top to bottom here in Zoom participants list. So let's start with Alex. What are your takeaways? Did you learn something or?
Sure. I thought that like I said earlier, it's great to see these forms being used in a practical sense, and I'm still trying to get a grasp on the back end of it, of course, but that'll all come in time. But I thought the last lab you guys did with the debug slider, that was interesting and definitely useful. So.
All right, wonderful. Yeah, that debug slider I've seen. I watched Mel work with the client, and she used the debug slider when we were deploying forms to the client side. So I saw instantly how that debug slider was a benefit when we are troubleshooting, and we want to know when the form is submitting successfully, when the commands are running correctly in the background. We can just take a peek by just sliding that section and not clicking any or not going outside of the view, right? So that's really helpful.
Anything that makes troubleshooting easier is great with me.
Yeah, that's correct. All right, so Caroline, do you want to go next?
Like I said before, I think my favorite thing that I learned today is that I don't have to export all of my source files anymore and make changes to those. And I'm anxious to try out your new technique with the JavaScript and the screen tip.
Thank you. Yeah, it's much better now. It's we're doing a lot of these shortcuts for you. All right, thanks, Caroline. Catherine, what are your takeaways?
Yep, so I'm in the process of designing a new form at the moment. So I think just about everything today is relevant to that. But particularly the hoverable dropdowns and the overlay were things that I was actively looking to put into the new form. So that's great. I think this was certainly the day that I was thinking was going to be most useful for what I'm doing at the moment.
All right, I'm excited to hear your experience adding those techniques. Yeah, thank you. All right, so Debbie, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I think for me, I'm particularly excited about the taskbar piece. I think that has the ability to improve our documents exponentially. I mean, yeah, I think I'm excited to take this away now and actually go and do it in our own forms.
All right, wonderful. Yeah. Thanks for that comment. Okay, Emma.
Hello. Well, like a lot of other
Hello.
people, I really, really loved the hoverable drop downs. I think more often than not, our forms are very, very large. They include a huge amount of data. I mean, Mel can attest to that. So we deal with lists that have, I think Nicole can clarify this for me, but it's like hundreds of items in lists, and we're always looking for ways to display that a bit better to people. So I know we'll be making use of the hoverable drop downs. One other thing that I really like, though, is I've always really, really liked the overlays. I think that they're really, really cool. And I know that Nicole and several of our forms have created overlays that actually have logic in them for attaching metadata to forms that people are working in, or having people query data from our database. So I think the overlays are kind of a hidden star, I don't think many people know how useful they can be because you can put form logic in the overlay. So I really, really like those.
Wow, that's more advanced. Oh, all right. So I'm really happy that you were able to apply this technique already in your forms. And yeah, I know that you've already seen these techniques in the past October training. Yeah, we were hoping to get more to develop new contents for you. So um, yeah, hopefully tomorrow's topics are that we will present are uh, more fresh.
We're looking forward
Yeah.
to it.
Yeah. All right. So thank you, Emma. Misty, do you have any comments?
Yeah, we use, several of the techniques now, but we will be having, I need to start some finance forms. And I think I can literally use every single one of these in the finance forms. So it'll be fun to try to incorporate them myself.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Wow, let us know.
excellent info. Yep.
Yeah, let us know how it goes.
Fingers crossed.
All right. So Nicole?
Hello. So like Emma said, we take advantage of a lot of these techniques. We are getting more into the dashboards, and I do like to use filter logic in the dashboards. When we have a user who opens a form, there might be 3 options, and when they click the button, it'll pass a filter through before it queries the list. But I really dig in the filter buttons in the lists themselves, because like Emma said, some of our items are hundreds and thousands of rows. And right now, I mean, we've been trying to use sort table command in other filter commands, but they're really not, they're complicated. This is a lot easier. So I'm really excited to try this one.
Thank you. Yeah, well, what I showed you is filtering using SharePoint list query, but in one of the forms I've worked on, I used REST query for that hoverable dropdown, and I noticed that there is a significant improvement with performance when you're filtering. So maybe you can study the lab and maybe you can enhance it a bit more by converting it to REST queries. If you think that's one way to improve performance in your forms, especially if you are querying large sets of data. Yeah, hopefully that will be helpful. Okay, last is Suzanne. Hello.
Hi.
Thanks for staying.
Oh, sure. So I think these are some really super cool enhancements over InfoPath, and I can see tons of different ways we can apply them for a lot of our forms. So I'm anxious to get my hands on it and give it a try.
All right. Let us know. Okay, thank you. Wonderful, wonderful to hear. Okay, so thank you. Thanks for sharing all your feedbacks and comments. As always, we are here to help you if you have any questions or if you run into any issues, or even if you just would like to suggest a feature in Forms Viewer or in Q rules, maybe suggest that to us, and we'll look into that if it's possible to add it or to fix it. Sorry, to fix any issues that we may have encountered with our app. So yeah, let us know. And then you can also check our YouTube channel for weekly webinars, tutorials, and training. And we're going to upload this recording later today. So watch out for that. Yeah, so have a great day. Thanks for making it to day 3. Hope to see you again tomorrow for day 4. Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
Thank you.